Hi, everyone. We are doing a virtual recording today of our workshop focused on support animals. So we'll be talking about service animals, emotional support animals, therapy animals, and kind of the differences between those and some additional considerations. And so to briefly introduce ourselves, my name is Jess Lindquist. I'm an adult case manager here with Brain Injury Services. I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor, a brain injury specialist, and a certified trauma professional. And additionally, I'm also the proud owner of an emotional support animal.
My name is Katie Schnitker. I'm the Outreach and Advocacy Manager here at Brain Injury Services. I'm also a former client of Brain Injury Services. I'm currently a volunteer at Washington Hospital Center and Virginia Hospital Center with my therapy dog, Penny. So there are three kinds of support animals. We have emotional support animals, therapy animals, and service animals. And we're going to learn the different roles these animals play in supporting humans. We will also talk about the different legal rights and responsibilities for the humans that are using these support animals.
So to start off with, we have a piece of legislation that's really important here. So the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA, is a federal civil rights act prohibiting discrimination against people with disabilities in everyday activities. And so a lot of people with disabilities use support animals in order to fully participate in their everyday life or to improve their quality of life. However, the ADA only protects service animals. So emotional support animals and therapy animals are not included under those ADA protections. And so to start with emotional support animals, an emotional support animal is any animal that provides emotional support or relief from symptoms of a diagnosed disability or mental health condition. They do not require specific training in order to fulfill that role, and they're not limited to dogs or cats. However, here is Tully. He is my Irish setter and my emotional support animal for my condition. And so what do I need to do to get an emotional support animal? So they are essentially prescribed by a licensed mental health provider or another qualified medical provider, such as maybe a neurologist. In the state of Virginia, to have an emotional support animal, you would need to get an official letter from that provider stating that you are in need of this emotional support animal or that you would benefit from it. You do not need to register your animal online or obtain a specific certification, verification, etc.
And this is my dog, Penny, who is a certified therapy dog. As I mentioned earlier, Penny and I volunteer as a therapy dog team at Washington Hospital Center and Virginia Hospital Health every weekend. We also visit Georgetown University as needed. Penny and I are a certified therapy team through the Alliance of Therapy Dogs. And to become a certified therapy team, we had to be tested to ensure that we had a good relationship and that Penny had the right temperament for therapy dog work. Therapy animals must be friendly, patient, confident, and gentle. And after our initial test, passing that temperament test, Penny and I received instructions on conducting therapy visits during supervised visits to a medical facility. And my goal after becoming a certified therapy team was to do visits at Washington Hospital Center, which is where I was a trauma patient after my accident in 2007. And I'm very proud of the fact that Penny right now is the only animal at Washington Hospital Center visiting patients in their rooms throughout the hospital. Penny and I also work as a recreational therapist at Virginia Health Center in Arlington on Sundays. And we work with that therapist and visit patients. And sometimes the patients will have a specific task to work on with Penny. And it's amazing. She's very good at her job. So Penny and I primarily visit with patients, although we get a lot of love from the staff as well. And I take pictures of the staff, and the patients and their families often take their own pictures for their personal use. She's very popular, and my favorite thing is when we're walking down the hallway and her name is called out because people recognize her. And then a lot of times when we visit students at Georgetown, the students will show pictures to Penny of their dogs at home. So there are many benefits of therapy animals. Therapy dogs help reduce stress during visits. They help people build relationships and enhance emotional growth. They reduce anxiety and stress in people of all ages. And especially during finals when we're at Georgetown University, it gives the students an opportunity to take a break from their studies. Interacting with therapy dogs can improve reading, memory, problem solving, and executive functioning skills. Therapy dogs can help alleviate isolation and despair by providing love and affection. And they also create an environment where clients feel comfortable and accepted and can promote conversation and communication between clients and therapists. And walking a therapy dog can encourage people to be more active, improving motor skills and independent movement. And finally, therapy dogs can release endorphins in the brain, which may help reduce pain levels for patients.
And then with service dogs, under Title II and III of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, service animals are limited to dogs, although we did learn that there is a separate ADA provision about miniature horses. There is no restriction for dogs in terms of the breed or size of the dog. So that means a Chihuahua or a Dachshund or a Great Dane could all potentially be service animals depending on their ability to perform a task that they are trained to do that's directly related to the person's disability. And so we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like.
So service dogs are trained to perform a wide variety of tasks to help their handlers based on their specific needs. Some examples of tasks that a service dog can do are such as a guide dog, often referred to as a seeing eye dog. They can guide their handler to a safe place, home, or specific location. They can also help their handler navigate around objects and notify them of stairs or changes in elevation. A service dog can be trained to detect the onset of psychiatric episodes. The dog can provide deep pressure therapy and tactile stimulation to interrupt harmful behaviors. And the dog can also retrieve medication and call for help. A seizure response dog can be trained to detect the onset of a seizure and will stay close to their handler, fetch medication, or telephone or guide them away from trouble.
And then in terms of the process of obtaining a service animal, so there are a couple different ways to do that. One option is to purchase a service animal through a for-profit organization, although the challenge here is that it can be very costly, sometimes $30,000 to $40,000, depending on where you get the dog from. And not all organizations are reputable, unfortunately. So it's really important to do your research in terms of where you are looking to obtain this animal from. You might be able to apply for one through a nonprofit organization. Unfortunately, many have waiting lists, so that's something to be prepared for. Fortunately, if you are selected for a service dog through one of those organizations, you may only have to pay about $1,000 to $3,000, depending on the organization, of course, plus the expenses. So the food, ongoing training, other types of things that go into caring for an animal. There may also be fundraising opportunities to help you afford that cost. The other option that you do have is technically to train your own dog, although this can be still costly in terms of training, can be difficult to do, and it can be very time consuming. So it's a really big commitment if that's something you are interested in. Although it is possible, there is no rule that you can't train your own service dog, but we do recommend, reaching out to professional training. For the clients of brain injury services, we recommend talking to your case manager for help finding resources and information about this process. And so in terms of the training of service animals, again, it can be very expensive. So according to the American Kennel Club, the cost of training a service dog could exceed $25,000. This would include training for the person, as well as the periodic follow-up training. It's kind of a use it or lose it situation. So you want to continue that follow-up training periodically to ensure that the dog is still a reliable service dog. And again, there are several options for training. So it might be the nonprofit or the for-profit agency where you obtain the dog from. They might be able to help you train the dog. Some organizations and private trainers offer service dog training programs. Again, it's really important to do your research and make sure you're choosing an organization that is reputable. And again, the other option is self-training. Usually, though, that's with the help of a private trainer that you hire. So yes, you could technically train your own service animal. The Americans with Disabilities Act does not require service dogs to be professionally trained. People with disabilities do have the right to train a dog themselves and are not required to get a special trainer or a training program. The Department of Justice essentially fostered an honor system, which means that the task the dog is trained to do, or perform on command or cue to assist a person with a disability, is more important than providing a specific program as the way to differentiate, is this a service animal or is it not? So essentially, the dog needs to be able to do the task rather than to prove it has a license or certification. There are some training standards and guidance though. So the International Association of Assistance Dog Partners has developed a set of minimum training standards for public access. So it encourages handlers to have their service animal complete a public access test where it meets these standards to prove that it is in fact a good and reliable service animal.
So to qualify as a service animal, the dog must be trained to perform a specific task related to a person's disability. For instance, if a dog can sense an anxiety attack and takes action to prevent or lessen its impact, it's classified as a service animal. So a dog is not considered a service animal under the Americans with Disabilities Act if it can only provide comfort. And that's the category of this emotional support animal. So we're going to review again. So service dogs, they are trained to perform a specific task. Emotional support dogs provide companionship and can help with depression or anxiety. They do not have special training to perform tasks. And therapy dogs are dogs that are trained to provide comfort and support to people in various settings. So if you have an animal, what are your legal rights? So the first question a lot of people has, where can I take my animal? So for service dogs are covered by the American with Disabilities Act and have the legal right to go with their owners into public places, including airplanes, trains, and buses. Emotional support dogs do not have public access rights. However, they can live in no pet housing with documentation. And then therapy dogs they do not have public access except to the facilities they work or are invited to. These dogs are trained to provide comfort and support to people in various settings, such as hospital, schools, libraries, and nursing homes. And they can be part of a volunteer visiting team, a facility, or a dog that works professionally.
I want to add, I did have a client recently ask me, what is the difference between an emotional support animal and a therapy animal? Because they are kind of similar in the sense that they both provide that therapeutic comfort. The difference would be that the emotional support animal is for you, the handler, and the therapy animal is essentially a volunteer for community members.
So can your service animal be denied entry? And service animals are working animals and not pets. So a service animal cannot be denied entry to a public place or business. However, an animal can be removed, not the owner, but just the animal can be removed if it is not under control of the handler, is out of control and the handler does not take effective action to control it, or if the animal is not housebroken. So again, just to clarify, so the animal can be asked to be removed, but the handler, if they're able to secure the animals safely, the handler can come back, can come back into that place of business.
So some examples of what this might look like in real life. Let's say there is a boarding school who has different dormitories for the students. If there are students with severe allergies to dogs, the school could reserve the certain dorms specifically for those students. In that case, a student with a service animal would not be able to enter that area with the service animal. They, again, as the handler could enter, but the service dog could be restricted because of the threat that it poses to the other students. And additionally, at the zoo, service animals can be restricted from areas where the animals on display are either the natural prey or predator of dogs. So if the presence of the service dog would be disruptive and cause the displayed animals to be aggressive, agitated, or just very stressed, the staff could request that the service animal be removed from that part of the zoo. However, they can't be restricted from all of the other areas just because they're a dog. So the Fair Housing Act is another piece of legislation to consider. So if you have a disability-related need for a service animal or an emotional support animal, you can request a reasonable accommodation from your landlord. However, the landlord can also request documentation from you, such as a letter from your doctor or licensed mental health provider that is familiar with your disability. The letter would not need to list what your disability is, only that you have one and that a service animal or ESA is needed. Both service animals and emotional support animals are not considered pets. Therefore, under the Fair Housing Act, you should not be charged pet rent, pet deposits, or other pet-related fees. Okay, and so what are the handler's rights in this situation? So if you have a service dog, anyone in the public that meets you can ask, is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? And they can also ask what work or task has the dog been trained to perform. However, they cannot request any documentation or proof that the dog is a legitimate service animal. And they also cannot request that the dog demonstrate its task or ask about the nature of your disability. And so a special vest is actually not required. Technically, there's no federal registration or license for a service animal. However, there are a lot of companies out there that sell licenses, vests, tags, etc., that claim to register a dog as a service animal. However, these are not recognized under the Department of Justice, and therefore they have no legal weight or protections under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So the support animal handler may choose to put these vests or tags on their working animal to identify that to the public. However, these are not required. So maybe if you have a seizure response dog who's supposed to be working, you can let other people know by putting that vest on the dog. But just because you put a vest on the dog, that in and of itself is not necessarily proving that it is a service animal. And beware of some of the scams out there. When I put into Google service animal certificate, this is one of the first things that show up. There are a lot of companies out there that want you to pay to get a certificate and the official gear. However, again, this does not have any legal weight under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and this would not serve as protection if there was some sort of case. And so why can't I just say that my pet is a service animal? And so there are a couple of reasons. The first is that false claims can lead to negative attitudes that handlers might be faking it. Additionally, untrained animals can jeopardize the safety of others. And a growing number of states have passed laws making it illegal to falsely claim that you're entitled to be accompanied by a service animal.
I think that's important to highlight. In Virginia specifically, according to Virginia law, it is illegal to represent a dog as a service animal to gain access to a place where pets are prohibited. Virginia law prohibits a fraudulent representation of a service animal, and violators may face fines or other penalties. So you just need to make sure that you're following the law so you don't get in trouble.
There's some other things to consider. Whether your dog is or is not a support animal. Is the dog trained with basic obedience skills, potty training, etc.? Have they ever been aggressive, or do they excessively bark or have any other disruptive behaviors? If so, that could warrant some additional training. You might want to consider whether these things will enhance or take away from your experience in public with the animal. Additionally, you should be prepared to navigate questions from others in public. So knowing what they are and are not allowed to ask you is going to be really important in protecting you and your privacy. Additionally, if there are other people in public with support animals, let's say I'm misrepresenting a brand new puppy I got as a service animal in training. And if the puppy is barking and not housebroken and just generally disruptive, that could disrupt the other support animals' behavior and limit their ability to do their work effectively. Some other things to consider. Some people do misrepresent their animals as assistance animals in order to bring them places they're not allowed to avoid that pet rent, as we've said before, or just because they have a misunderstanding of the animal's role. Maybe somebody assumes that having an emotional support animal means that you have a service animal, and that's not necessarily the case. So it's important to consider how another animal's behavior might affect you and your support animal. So thank you all for joining our presentation today, and feel free to reach out to Brain Injury Services if you have further questions about this process. We do have some resources here on this last page with just some more information about service animals, the different types of support animals, and how you might obtain one.